Watch this.
I'm tired. I honestly am. I'm just tired of all this.
Well, if you're one of those who saw the stock market in red and thought, well, maybe I guess I'm not ready to retire, you're not alone. And if you feel like there's nothing you can do, that's exactly what one financial advisor says you should do.
This is a path Idaho should never, ever have to go down again.
Nobody remembers the pandemic fondly, but lawmakers this session certainly look back on it a lot, removing any chance of replicating how we responded. If you watch 12 weeks of State House shenanigans, you're bound to see some stuff that might actually make you laugh. We've just been waiting for CNA-DA to finally share our State House Superlatives Awards. Well, the 2025 legislative session is in the books. At least the work of the lawmakers is over. The governor still has a bevy of bills to consider for his signature, mostly of the appropriation sort. Of the 342 he's been given, the governor has vetoed only one, with 19 bills left in his inbox. We're still waiting on whether he will sign the candy and soda ban for SNAP recipients, selling state forest land to foreign adversaries, hospitals and property tax exemptions, a bill to make the permit process for broadband projects quicker, defining the standards for public defenders, and whether to let Idaho citizens access the Constitutional Defense Fund so they can sue the feds over water and grazing rights. There's also the repeal of the Empowering Parents program left to sign, which seems inevitable considering the notable now canon of consequence we've seen. Beginning with $50 million now allocated for a parental school choice tax credit. Add that to the several tax relief bills, and there will be more than $400 million not going into Idaho's general fund. There was also the reform to Medicaid expansion, adding a work requirement and limit to costs, which could save Idaho nearly $16 million with federal approval, that is. Idaho is now in the immigration enforcement game and hoping to get out of the diversity, equity, and inclusion business for good. All of this was mentioned by Idaho's majority party in their post-session press conference last week, and they touted it as, quote, moving Idaho forward, end quote. However, there was a lot of looking back this session for many lawmakers, specifically to what was happening in Idaho 5 years ago. A global pandemic, a statewide stay-at-home order, and several cities under a mask mandate, which made this session and many lawmakers victoriously vindictive about a virus. This session,
The Senate will be in order.
there was a spate of pandemic-related bills
Is that the whole mask thing became politicized, not on the basis of science.
being passed around the State House.
At the same time, I want to limit the possibility of a repeat.
Like, well,
Was it used during the pandemic to treat COVID? Yes.
a virus.
What I find really troubling is the stifling of alternate voices of scientists.
The first to clear a chamber,
And Senate Concurrent Resolution 102.
forming a committee to study Idaho's response to the coronavirus.
What happened in our schools? What happened in our hospitals? Businesses closing down.
After that, it was a cascade of a COVID or a COVID-adjacent agenda.
And I don't think that we were told all the truth.
From possibly holding Dr. Anthony Fauci accountable for state crimes
And we want to make sure that Dr. Fauci actually knows that.
to holding health districts to only necessary and reasonable actions.
Now, this isn't only about limiting power. It's about reaffirming our rights, our choices, and our bodily autonomy.
To making sure wearing masks will never be mandated.
I believe we need to move forward as a society to respect people's medical decisions and stop trying to force people into compliance.
Almost all of these,
As people often say, if you were in the committee last year, this might seem familiar.
we've seen before in some form or another.
When I see COVID issues pop up, I think, we're doing this again. I thought we covered this ad nauseum, like there wasn't any other angle that we hadn't already covered, but I was wrong.
For example, 9 times Idaho legislators have tried to pass a ban on mask mandates, dating back to the peak of the pandemic. This year, they got it done.
Really, I'm just kind of asking they treat us like adults.
So what changed?
I think in previous years they couldn't get them through. I think you had a different makeup on the body.
Yes, the Senate and House moved further to the right during the last election.
Well, I think a lot of legislators are just trying to get that extra juice out of the out of the COVID issue.
But Senator James Ruchti says it's also the mindset that shifted.
When I would talk to Republicans, it was very clear they felt like this was an absolute mandate for them, that the people loved all the ideas that they had been talking about over the last few years. When Trump won the election, I think every bad idea that we had looked at and rejected got reintroduced in this session.
That's because, according to Republican leaders, there's still a lot of lingering emotion over what happened.
There is still, in Idaho, upset, frustration, sometimes anger at the way the COVID-19 epidemic was handled.
So they want to make sure that we make it clear that we don't want that again, right? We don't want shutdown again. We don't want to be, forced to get a vaccine to keep our job or whatever. I think it's just a fear factor saying, hey, we know what happened in the past. Let's just make sure we cover the bases now so it doesn't happen in the future.
Which is why we also saw a push to make ivermectin available over the counter.
Meanwhile, people across Idaho are already obtaining ivermectin in many ways, whether online, across state lines, or through unofficial channels.
And several pushes of a medical freedom bill.
This legislation modifies the existing Coronavirus Stop Act,
which would keep any Idaho business, government, or school from requiring any medical intervention, like a vaccine, for entry or service.
No individual will be coerced into receiving a medical intervention against their will.
The pushback, however, came from those worried about what else they're taking away.
This isn't about whether masks work or whether they don't. It's about usurping local control. And it's about even borderline disrespect of local control.
We talk about local control, but we talk about it like it's some magic, elixir. It's this magic thing. We just say local control and spread fairy dust on it, but that's not, it really is a principle.
Is it a good idea to legislate, whether it's the governor's power to declare emergencies or masks or district health powers and what they can say? Is that something that should be happening in this building?
I think it's a terrible idea. The reason is we don't know what the next pandemic is going to be. And so what we're doing in this building is we're taking the lessons from the last pandemic, which are based on a false foundation, a lot of misinformation, and we are pulling tools off of the shelf when we don't even know what the next emergency is going to be.
That's something we should be very cautious in doing.
Speaker Moyle says that won't matter.
Listen, if there's a problem, we're all going to work together to solve the problem. And if something comes up similar to COVID again, we'll all work together to find a solution. But we don't want to take away people's personal freedoms and rights.
Which is how a pandemic became political and fueled policies for the future, for better or worse.
I think there are a lot of people in this building who know that many of these policies, in this case the mask mandates and things about medical freedom, vaccines, they know they're not correct, but they don't want to stand out as somebody who isn't going along with the majority who's voting for it.
Well, as of Friday afternoon, 4 of the COVID-related bills had been signed into law. That'd be masks, health districts, medical freedom, and how we won't follow World Health Organization dictates, which isn't a thing anyway, since the WHO has no jurisdiction over Idaho. The Fauci resolution from the House and the COVID committee from the Senate, that resolution also passed. Making ivermectin available without a prescription, that one is still under the governor's consideration. There was also a lighter side to this record-setting session. The award for most bills ever goes to the 68th legislature. But there were also many memorable moments, from bills to belly laughs, musical renditions, and procedural pratfalls. The State House served up a session full of hits, hiccups, and in some cases, hilarity. So as the gavel falls on another session, Hunter Funk has a few other envelopes to open.
Gentlemen, welcome to the Idaho State House Superlatives, where the red carpet may be imaginary, but the moments are very real. We're kicking off the golden gavels for the standout stars of the 2025 legislative session, with the category that struck a chord, Best Musical Moment.
With your permission, I'm gonna sing a quick verse of a song.
And I have a question.
Do you hear the people singing in the voice of angry men?
What's it all about, Alfieri? Is it just 'cause there might be some fraud?
These are the voices of a people who will not be slaves again.
What's it all about when you sort it out, Alfieri?
Our next category proves that even in a divided legislature, there's common ground, and apparently it's in their vocabulary. The lawmakers' favorite word to describe a bill.
That, Mr. Chairman, that's what this, I'd say simple RS does. That's what this RS does.
But really, it's pretty simple.
This is a super simple bill.
It's a very simple bill.
Is simply
So it's very short.
Simple bill.
I think that this is a pretty simple lift.
But basically, this bill simply,
Essentially,
this is a real simple bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, there's been people stand up before you and start out by saying this is a very simple bill. This is not.
This next one is for the best debate, as lawmakers tackled one of the most eye-catching accessories on Idaho roads. Nothing says spirited legislative debate quite like determining the fate of dangling inanimate anatomy.
It could penalize people who put certain things on their trailer hitches.
They call them truck nuts. They're gross, they're offensive, and kids on the road see them.
You know, bachelorette parties where they're wearing necklaces with certain images or features of the male body on it.
So why wouldn't the police get a call and say, that offends me, pull it off the truck?
Again, I think that's kind of fantasy land. I don't think that's going to happen because the bill is referencing people exposing themselves or using sex toys in a lewd way in public. So no one's going to go after a trailer hitch.
Now, even the most seasoned lawmakers can trip over the policy process. This is the best of poor procedures.
Good gentlemen, you have to move because it's it's 2/3 of the body. You need to move that we.
I will move, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for that.
I move that we move RS 31903 forward to, I don't know the words.
Do you want that motion repeated, or is that?
Just say you move.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House to now adjourn until 11 a.m. Thursday, March 20th.
Mr. Speaker, I second the motion.
Before we make the motion, the Speaker would like to move us to the 16th order of business adjournment. Bill 22.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House do now adjourn until 10:30 Thursday, March 20th.
I second for a second time.
House adjourned until the hour of 10:30 a.m. February, sit back down. You want to keep us here. March 20th.
And finally, if that didn't get a reaction out of you, this next category should do the trick. From jaw drops to eye rolls, it reminds us that not everyone has a poker face.
That's an entire new layer of regulation. Again, does this make it more or less accessible for the people to assemble?
I don't think marriage is a fundamental right.
Representative Keeley's.
All right, I'm ready.
Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, not to interrupt you, which I did, but
Yes.
You jumped.
Well, best of luck next year for the lawmakers who didn't make the cut for the Idaho State House superlatives.
And a lot left on the cutting room floor, I'm sure. That was
Yeah.
awesome. I'm so glad that we finally did that. We were wanting to do that for years.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we finally put that together because especially, it's a simple bill. We hear that so much. And you're like, is it though?
Is it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Kevin, our
Yes.
photographer, who was keeping track of all the little tidbits
Exactly.
throughout the year.
And for Logan putting that together.
Yeah, and Logan.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much, Hunter.
Thank you.
Well, the stock market's dramatic plunge has many Idahoans worried about their financial future. Following tariff announcements, Wall Street is suffering its worst days since the pandemic. And Idahoans are wondering what this means for retirement plans, housing decisions, and even those small-time everyday expenses. Aspen Shumpert, heard those concerns about these turbulent economic times. She took them to a financial expert.
I mean, the amount of money that's been lost in the last 3 days is just astronomical.
The stock market's recent volatility following tariff announcements sent shockwaves through Wall Street and into Idaho households.
At least before I could kind of know where I was standing. Now I have no idea what this impact this is going to do because the scale is just beyond belief.
For young families, the market downturn creates uncertainty about major life decisions.
I'm concerned that with the drop of the stock market, we won't be able to sell our house and we won't be able to buy a new house to support our growing family. I think it affects all the aspects of American life, housing, groceries, cars.
While anxiety is intense among some residents, financial expert Dave Petzo says this is actually part of a normal system, though the sharp 2-day drop made it feel more dramatic to some.
The average person is going to see absolutely nothing from this because markets always recover, whether it takes a year or two. But when markets go down, the idea that, oh, now that it's gone down, I should get rid of this thing is absurd. It's a buying time, not a selling time. But it does play on our emotions.
But for those nearing retirement, like Boise resident Brian Hyatt, the market drop feels especially threatening.
And I'm ready to retire. I've put my 2 cents in and I've worked hard my whole life. And right now, I want to go enjoy the rest of my life, and I can't because it's all in turmoil.
But Petzo says preparation is key.
Because market corrections, whatever the cause, are totally normal. They're certain to occur over and over again all the days of our life. That's what they do. And so when we go down, you should have already expected that if you are needing the money.
And while some residents are already adjusting their spending habits,
holding off on big purchases. I'll tighten my belt for the time being since there's a lot unknown right now.
I'm just going to stop spending. That's all I'm going to do. I locked everything down. I deleted Netflix and all my services and cut off a bunch of lines I'm just going to scale back. And
Petzo suggests a counterintuitive approach that might surprise worried investors.
Do everything the opposite of what your emotions tell you. This will pass.
I would ask a financial advisor whether they would sell their stocks right now or whether they would hold.
Not unless you need the money.
Petzo advises patience during this market volatility and says he thinks it's also always best interest to stop and think before doing anything. We'll explore whether these drops signal a recession ahead coming up on the news at 6.
Well, it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, like you heard that guy say he's going to stop spending. That in turn will then lead, if more people do that, it will lead to a recession.
Yep.
All right. Look forward to that at 6. Thank you very much, Aspen. people taking their issues to Idaho's Capitol steps is an idea that has really, well, kind of stepped up lately. And speaking of blocky square things, the Minecraft movie created some attention for itself this weekend and for Idaho as well. Hunter Funk tells us more in today's 411.
Opening arguments in the Arizona conspiracy trial for Lori Vallow Daybell started today. She's the Idaho mom convicted of killing her 2 children as well as conspiring to kill her current husband's late wife. Vallow Daybell already caused contention after listing a witness the prosecution didn't have a chance to interview. So the judge questioned what his testimony would be.
Without giving away my entire defense.
Tune in to the news at 6 to hear more about the trial, and you can stream the trial on KTVB+. You can download it on your smart TV and watch for free.
Even if they make a difference for one student, it makes it worth it.
More than 1,000 people gathered at the state capitol last night for an Everyone is Welcome Here rally. It's been 1 month since administration asked a middle school teacher in the West Ada School District to remove signs in her classroom promoting inclusivity. There was another protest at the Capitol on Saturday. This one focused on sexual violence awareness and civil rights. The Hands Off Our Bodies, Hands Off Our Rights protest was in conjunction with other protests around the country. Idaho's on the big screen. The Gem State appeared multiple times in the new Minecraft movie that hit theaters over the weekend, probably because the director, Jared Hess, grew up in Preston. Fun fact, he also directed Napoleon Dynamite. And that's the 411 on the 208. I'm Hunter Funk.
All right, a lot of comments to get to on this Monday. This one first about the well, the upcoming recession, possibly. Dave Petso talking about this. Petso couldn't be more wrong. It's not a market correction. This is a reaction to idiotic tariffs, says Jack in Boise. Petso is out of touch with investors and retirees. Although somebody else also chimed in and said, just do what he says and everything will be fine. About the COVID bills. Are you kidding me? One Republican said it's about limiting power, reaffirming our rights, our choices, and our body autonomy, but yet they take away the rights of women in this state, says Julie. We probably had more than, I counted them up, more than a dozen of these exact messages that point to the hypocrisy. These legislators are wanting to be treated like adults and let us make our own medical decisions over our bodies, but women can't decide for themselves and their reproductive rights. That's according to B in Mountain Home. Thanks for the dizzying list of this session's bills. The golden gavels were great, but the highlight of today's show, the words bodily autonomy coming out of Brian Lenny's mouth. That's from Cecil in Meridian. Again, more than a dozen people saying the same exact thing, pointing out the hypocrisy of some of the bills when it comes to COVID. But we talked about that. They even use that, my body, my choice, to kind of promote these things. I will 100% clutch my pearls and call the cops on truck nuts and not respect your preferred pronouns, Mrs. Chairwoman. That's Tony from Boise. Love the superlative segment, showing how ridiculous some of our legislators can be by using a sense of humor helps us keep our sanity. Here's some more blooper faces next year. Thanks, Toy, for the great job you do. Thank you very much, Carolyn, for sending that in. And we're glad it's over, just like you are as well. Now we can move on to other stuff, maybe that's more interesting, maybe. All of what they did affects you in some way, but again, record-setting number of bills. We'll see what happens next year.
Continue with us and watch free now on the KTVB Plus app, everywhere you stream.